What's going on YouTube? It's your boy Numbskull here, back again. Now before we get into anything today, I want to apologize for not posting recently. I've been very busy. In fact, I've been so busy that I haven't had time to write a script for today's video, so we're winging this shit. Now, we're going to be doing something a little bit different. I'm calling it Erowid Expeditions, right? We're basically going to ask an AI to pick a random psychoactive drug out of all of them, and we're going to go on Erowid, we're going to go on the experience vaults and just start reading some reports, a certain number of them, from that substance. Starting from the top, going to read them exactly how they're written, and that's about it. So without further ado, let's get into it. Today's substance is going to be Bromo-DragonFLY. The first report here is coming in by a user, goes by the name of Tricky. This took place in the year 2008. Their dose, 330 milligrams oral of St. John's wort daily. Vitamins and supplements, unlisted dosage, daily. 250 micrograms of Bromo-DragonFLY via a blotter or a tab, 1 cup coffee, and 1 cigarette smoked. 35-year-old male, their weight is 86 kilograms, their religion is Neo-Pagan-Wiccan, meds, none, alternative meds, the St. John's wort, vitamin tablet, 100% RDA of all major vitamins, plus some minerals, fish oils, 600 milligrams, all taken daily, in the AM. Previous experience includes LSD, mushrooms via Liberty Cap, 2Cs of various types like 2CB, others including unknown pills, MDMA, various amphetamines, as well as an assortment of tryptamines. The reason for this experience: a new and somewhat rare chemical I have the opportunity to taste for the first time. Set and setting: I'm at home, and I have a few days off, so I'm testing a threshold dose of this chemical to check for unusual reactions before doing any further testing. Preparation: a simple cleaning, banishment of negativity. 5 milligrams of the compound was dissolved in 1 milliliter of water with a small amount of hydrochloride added. The free base went into solution easily. This was dosed onto 5 pieces of paper, 0.2 milliliters each piece. These were then dried to give 1 milligrams per. The scales used are accurate to 0.1 milligram, and the calibrated pipette is 0.01 milliliters. Combined accuracy should be more than sufficient. Drug identification: the drug was sold as Bromo-DragonFLY. There is little info on purity and insufficient sample to be tested. T-minus 15 minutes. BP 134/70, pulse 75. I take 250 micrograms Bromo-DragonFLY. 1 piece of paper cut into 4 equal-sized pieces. One of the pieces is placed on the tongue, noted a mild bittersweet taste and a tingling sensation. 30 minutes in. Not expecting much, so we'll try to sleep. As this is a long-lasting drug, any effects that appear are likely to be present when I wake. It takes a little while to sleep, and meditation is required due to being nervous. BP 146/75, pulse 85. 6 hours, 11 minutes in. Awake to find something is happening, but it's hard to say what. Vision seems sharper, giving things more depth. There is a hint of things moving out in peripheral vision. BP 124/65, pulse 82. 7 hours in. No change from above. Colors are enhanced a little, bright and sparkly things stand out more than normal. The tiredness that would be normal after only about 5 hours sleep isn't present, nor is stimulation. I don't feel much different than normal mentally, though maybe there is a tendency to think about things a little more deeply. There are also mild trails left by moving objects. I feel awake and a little bored. There is a very mild body buzz, slightly stimulant-like, but weak. There is also a slightly dreamy/floaty feeling. 11 hours in. Still not baseline. Nothing new to report. BP 112/71, pulse 86. 11 hours, 30 minutes in. Appetite is suppressed, but I'm going to eat anyway. So far, this has been the most powerful effect of this compound. All other effects are somewhat mild, if long-lasting. Eating proved to be enjoyable, and not difficult. There is a slight enhancement of taste, much the same as there is with colors. 12 hours in. I have had breakfast and 1 cup of coffee, and then I smoked a cigarette. This is expected to have an effect on blood pressure. BP 127/77, pulse 86. 12 hours, 15 minutes in. I think things have started to tail off a little now, though it is hard to say. The effects were mild to start with. 16 hours in. The above was more of a shift than tailing off. It's hard to say what has happened, but there is a change to a more dreamy state. The hours are just drifting past in a gently brominated way. There are still mild tracers, and sensory enhancement also mild. I have been out and done some shopping, and the walk was nice, most pleasant, even if the weather is cold and rainy. It's a little like being wrapped up in a bubble of something nice, but it's quite hard to pinpoint. Conversation is fine. If anything, I'm more social than usual. My train of thought is more easily derailed, but I remain focused if I want to. I have been smoking less than usual, though I did have a cigarette on the way back from the shops. Speaking to people seems to be easy, and conversations are fluid. There is a feeling of connectedness with others. This is also apparent, but lessened while speaking on the phone. It is possible to stay on subject, although it is easy to flow from subject to subject as well, without taking off in random directions. This is very pleasant and subtle. I'm trying to think of some other compound to compare it to, but it's difficult. There are none like this. The closest would be a low dose of mescaline-containing cactus. Even so, it isn't the same, and the duration is much, much longer. If anything, time seems to be passing more quickly than normal. There is still a mild stimulation, 17 hours in, but nothing overt. Just a feeling of being slightly more awake than normal. Again, I don't feel hungry, but decide to have lunch. It's a little later than normal, but I hadn't been thinking about it. Food still tastes good, and eating is easy to do, slightly enhanced flavors, but nothing extreme. BP 131/82, pulse 92. At 20 hours in, the effects are reducing, but it is happening quite slowly. There is still some effect, though it's getting hard to tell. I have become more accustomed to them by now. I notice them more when they start to go away, and I still don't feel the slightest bit tired, or sleepy. 20 hours, 30 minutes in. Third meal of the day. Again, not all that hungry, but the food was nice, and the taste still seems to be enhanced to an extent. I noticed the fresher taste as this meal was cooked fresh from good quality ingredients. I think the taste enhancement makes this especially clear. I can also report my first possible negative effect. I have a slight headache, although it seems to be fading rapidly. Another 20 hours, 30 minutes in. For what should have been a threshold dose, this is lasting an awfully long time. I'm sure of my measurements, so we'll assume this is a European batch. In this case, 250 micrograms is a light to medium dose. 22 hours in. Still some effects, mostly just slight stimulation, again nothing extreme. I'm fairly sure the other effects have faded, but as above, it is hard to tell at this stage. 24 hours, 30 minutes in. Still a mild stimulation. I do not feel sleepy at all. BP 140/82, pulse 77. 25 hours in. We'll try to sleep, though it may be difficult. 26 hours and unknown in. Sleep attained with difficulty. 34 hours in. Awake to feel fairly normal. There may be some residual buzz, but that could be due to lack of sleep. No hangover or unpleasant effects noted other than that. BP 116/64, pulse 74. This was a very strange substance, in that the effects at this dose were mild, but exceptionally long-lasting. It also becomes hard to tell if the effects are present or not, since it is easy to become accustomed to them. The experience was very positive throughout, if very subtle. As written above, it is almost like existing in a bubble of pleasantness. There is nothing overt or extreme, but overall the experience is very nice. I expect to repeat this and may try a slightly higher dose, although I would not want to push the dose too high too quickly. This substance has already taken me by surprise, and there are 2 or more batches with very different potency. The method of dosing is not what I would have chosen normally. The reasons for doing this are beyond the scope of a trip report. And that's the end of the first one on here. It was quite interesting, and it seemed to be a lower dose. Anywho, I'm going to save any opinions I might have until the end. We're moving on to the next one. This one is called Peaceful Beauty. It's by a Mr. Tambourine Man, and it happened in 2009. The Bromo-DragonFLY was sold to him as 2CB Fly. Dose, 300 micrograms oral Bromo-DragonFLY liquid, and then 45 minutes in, another 50 micrograms oral Bromo-DragonFLY liquid. Body weight, 170 pounds. Recently on various online forums for drug discussion and harm reduction, there was a good deal of coverage regarding the notorious batch of what proved to be 95% pure Bromo-DragonFLY, sold as 2CB Fly, leading to the death of an RC purveyor and several hospitalizations. Having obtained a portion of the B1 batch a few days before the first reports of death and hospitalizations came out, I held on to it until it was determined that the product was indeed merely mislabeled, at which point my curiosity became aroused as to its psychedelic potential. Having known of Bromo-DragonFLY prior to this event, I had always wanted an opportunity to try it, but considered it unlikely to ever be given the opportunity. Therefore, I was very grateful to have a chance to both help spread awareness about the possible effects of this drug in small doses, and gain a personal insight into the effects myself. After having read a report of safe ingestion of 250 micrograms, I decided to give it a trial at a dose of 350 micrograms. That's my man. I prepared for this by getting plenty of sleep in order to wake up relatively early, thus dose at a reasonable time and hopefully avoid having my sleep cycle massively altered by the drug's long duration. The only other chemicals in my system in the days following were numerous doses of vitamin C as I was fighting off a cold, and daily ginkgo biloba supplements, as well as 240 milligrams of aspirin on the day of the experience. When I woke up the morning of, I almost immediately measured and dosed 300 micrograms, which I measured with an oral syringe from a carefully measured and well-sealed solution in distilled water and ethanol. After approximately 45 minutes, I took a booster dose of 50 micrograms in order to ensure that I would still be able to have a noticeable, well-rounded feel of the substance while still being within safe parameters for the substance's dosage guidelines. I spent the first couple of hours in taking a shower, cleaning my apartment, and reading some experience reports while waiting for the drug to finally take effect. After about 90 minutes, I thought I had noticed some positive mood enhancement, and the slightest feeling of increased energy had come over me, but I was not sure whether it was an effect or not at such an early duration. While talking online to some friends and family, I began to notice the first unmistakable effects: a mild initial body load reminiscent of a small dose of methylphenidate, an increase in energy and talkativeness, as well as some distortions of objects around me. At this point, I also noticed some symptoms of vasoconstriction, such as a faint feeling of chilliness and mild tightness in the calf muscles, which would be noticed on and off throughout the experience. During the next half hour, the body load had decreased while both my mood and energy levels increased exponentially. Also at this point, my appetite left, although I had not eaten since last night and did not return until some 12 hours later. A mild body buzz began, which increased with the other effects and, although rather mild, felt very pleasant throughout the experience. By around the 3-hour mark, the effects were quite unmistakable, a solid plus on the Shulgin scale, sometimes drifting in between a plus and a plus half. Pardon me, you all, I'm not exactly sure what the Shulgin scale is. Anyways, particularly when standing still and observing any object for a long period of time. With the eyes open, objects seemed outlined and coated in a fine, almost fuzzy psychedelic veneer. and the relative sizes of objects would move and distort slowly after staring at them for a period. Colors seemed more saturated, and the appreciation for both color and texture was markedly increased, as was musical appreciation. With the eyes closed, few CEVs were noted, and those that were seemed to be largely diamond or crystalline motifs. When staring at complex objects, particularly the popcorn ceiling or the dappled linoleum floor, they would immediately begin to swirl and blur, with outlines and shapes forming for a mere moment, transforming or dissipating before they could be recognized. A fair bit of trailing was also noted, and was one of the first effects to be noticed during the come-up. Mentally, although I seemed to get distracted and lose my train of thought more easily when writing, I was able to talk quite eloquently. This drug seemed to sharpen my cognitive abilities, particularly with language, as puns and plays on words seemed to be more spontaneous when in this state. I also felt the desire to talk much increased, and became quite chatty for the duration of the effects. Also, throughout the entirety of the experience, I felt very positive and upbeat in a calm but definite way, as though nothing at all could possibly bother me. This was a particularly pleasant effect, because it allowed me a greater degree of freedom in interacting with environments that might have otherwise been frightening or irritating on another psychedelic, such as crossing a busy intersection. About 4 hours after dosing, I went with my friend and roommate R, who was sober but knew I had dosed, on a walk through town. I was feeling very energetic and positive, and felt as though I was viewing everything in a humorous or tolerant attitude. We began by walking to a nearby park, and through a number of neighborhoods, commenting on the styles of architecture of each house, and discussing the plants and the layout of the neighborhood. Conversation flowed very well and was very satisfying. The autumn leaves, houses, and the sky seemed much more detailed and aesthetically pleasing, so the effect of walking through town was extremely interesting. Also, I felt far less self-conscious walking in public than I would have on some other psychedelics, which added to the peace of mind that I was already feeling. An interesting effect of this dosage was that, when walking, I seemed almost sober, barring my altered vision and unusually good mood, until I stood still, when the feeling crept upon me and embraced me in the pleasant body sensations. I feel that at this dose, this drug would have been the perfect enhancement to walking through an art gallery, or as we were doing, exploring the outdoors. While we talked, we arrived on the campus we both attend, which was destination as he had choir performance to attend, and spent some more time walking through the arboretum. There are a few typos in here. I apologize, guys. I said I was going to read it as is, and I'm really trying to fix them, but they're just popping up. Anyways, after a time, we sat on a small dock on a lake in the and watched what I thought was one of the most beautiful sunsets I had ever seen. The details and textures of the clouds were magnified and enhanced to a stunning degree, as were the contrasts of color in the burning pink streaks of cloud and the light blue sky. The water had a very sensuous quality to it, which I have noticed before on other psychs, but I found especially pronounced with the Bromo. The reflections of the sunset seemed to magnify the intensity of the colors and the textures in the sky. After a time, our talk turned to discussions of cultural values, science, and religion. I found this to be particularly interesting, as my friend and I are apt to get into long debates on the topic of religion. He's Catholic, and I'm non-religious. We are almost always able to find points of consensus somewhere, and so our debates really approximate more of an exercise in trying to parse out ideas until we reach a point of commonality or disagreement. In my state, I found presenting my points and dissembling my thoughts easier than when sober, and the conversation was very enjoyable to say the least, ending with the common agreement that we both disliked many of the tactics used by overly self-assured individuals who seek to spread their point of view regardless of their beliefs. As night fell, we walked back into town, where I bought my friend and I some food, and then dropped him off at his choir performance. The visual effects had by this time decreased only slightly, and the mental and physical effects had not decreased by any degree. I still felt extremely cheerful, verging on exuberant, and was walking so fast that I had to take off my jacket to keep from getting too hot, despite it being rather a cold evening. My mindset was very pleasantly upbeat and contemplative, and I recalled numerous small insights I had throughout the day regarding myself, my lifestyle, and my relationships with others. When contemplating myself, I was able to avoid falling into the pitfall of being overly judgmental, and instead felt that my assessment of myself was more healthier and balanced on this chemical than others in my experience. Once I arrived at my apartment, I spent some time talking online about my experience and writing up some cursory notes for the report. I also noticed that I felt colder sitting still and trying to write than I did walking outdoors in a colder temperature, which I assume must have been an effect of vasoconstriction, which I remedied with a hot shower. After 12 hours, I felt the effects beginning to fade gradually, although I as by no means near baseline. You see what I'm talking about? Alright, anyway, I still had a very good mood, felt very talkative, and generally content to lie down and read, or think about the day's experience. When my roommate and another friend arrived after the performance, I was still very talkative, and we spent several hours watching PSAs from the 1940s and 50s, marveling and commenting on the amusing degree of bigotry and stupidity contained therein. One of my friends contended that I seemed quite a bit more cheerful than than usual, which I was, leading me to realize that this drug not only acts as a long-term mood enhancer, but also provide a moderate feeling of well-being that makes up much of the character of the come-down/afterglow. It was at least 14 hours after ingestion that I felt my appetite return and felt the psychedelic energy bunny effect. I'd been experiencing transition into a feeling of sleepiness. I took 2 milligrams of melatonin, and although my quality of sleep felt very poor, much like falling asleep after a high dose of amphetamines, I awoke feeling quite well rested. Overall, I'd say the substance was extremely enjoyable and worthy of many future trials at lower and higher doses. It could be best described as a sort of psychedelic champagne, light and bubbly without any distinct negative side effects. I also feel that, at this, or a slightly lower dose, this drug could have potential as an addition to another psychedelic with fewer cardiovascular interactions, such as mushrooms or morning glories, and that it could ensure a positive mood throughout the duration of a more conventional psychedelic experience. I also feel that this drug would synergize well with nitrous oxide and enhance recall of the experience, which is something that I mean to try in the near future. Overall, this substance is definitely a new favorite of mine, and I intend to use it to great effect when hiking in the Sierras for extended periods, and as an enhancer of natural beauty and conversation. Also, I'm glad this shows that the B1 batch is not the deadly poison it was originally believed to be, and has excellent potential in small doses for many positive, uplifting experiences. And guys, that would be the end of the second report. I'm actually going to go ahead and stop this video here because we're going to be coming up on 25 minutes long after only 2 of these. This is a test video, so to speak. And it's also coming up on time for my second daily dose of kratom. So I'm going to rest my voice. I hope you all enjoyed. I don't know if I'll be making any more of these. We'll see what happens. We'll see if the algorithm likes it. We'll see if you guys like it. If you did, please like, consider subscribing, comment, whatever the fuck you want to say down below. And I will see you all in the next one. Peace!